I will read all of it because it's important we read all of it. So I hope you guys don't mind, but I think it's important. So we read all of it in detail so we understand 100% what's going to happen. Right. Expanded RVR Lakes. So instead of relying solely on the 4 battlefield objectives, 2 keeps and 2 war camps that have been the mainstay of Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning RVR for over a decade, I will add that's pretty much the same thing on Return of Reckoning and Flame of War. We will be breaking the map up into controlled sectors. These sectors will expand outside the RVR Lake that War Age of Reckoning had and into the PvE areas. This means we will be using as much of each zone as we can make sense of combat in that zone. If a zone has PvE in it, all of it will be disabled whenever a zone becomes an active RVR zone. I think this is pretty clear. Pretty much imagine any zone. We had the little red lining of the PvP. Now imagine the whole zone PvP. And all the PvE stuff gets disabled. I don't know if they're going to disappear or they're just going to be there and you don't see them, whatever what the system is going to be. But any map you do PvP in, imagine when you open the map, not just the little red outline area, but all of it. So it gets super expanding to the whole thing. This means all NPCs that aren't required for PvP will disappear and you will be unable to progress any PvE content for that zone. This is to reduce the asymmetry of the map as well as prevent players from using the PvE elements to gain an upper hand in PvP. One situation is when people stay on the PvE and they start DPSing the PvE, the NPCs, they can kill them, but they stay in combat and they build the morale, they get morale for and just go into the PvP zone and just bomb you. That was always kind of unfair. That's one situation you can exploit PvE NPCs. You will see below that this will not inhibit players from using PvE to reach max level at any point. However, I don't know how this sentence is, allow me the word say important, since this is a PvP centric server and PvE should be minimal on this, but when a zone is RVR active, all PvE disappears, can't do it, and every player will be RVR flagged. Okay. You can't do PvE, that means you can't do it. Okay. Terrain editor will allow us to eventually use all the zone as we open up methods for players to traverse the map in a more natural way. This is important only for certain zones. A sector is taken via proximity domination. You must have more living players than the enemy in the area. Yeah, okay, there's a misspelling there, I'll fix it. More living players than the enemy in the area in order to progress the sector capture bar. Progress cannot be made if there are 20 or more living enemies in the sector. This means you need to kill or push the enemy away from the sector in order to take it and can't just simply outnumber them to win. Sectors can only be captured if your faction owns an adjacent sector. Zones will start with several contestable sectors across the map. This will create natural fighting areas designed for the usual push-pull style of combat as people die, regroup. There are 4 types of sector: basic, chapter, keep, and war camp. All right, so 2 conditions so far. Okay, so we're going to have multiple zones. We will show you a map later. They did make a nice little example of a map. So we're going to have multiple zones. You can capture them if you have more living players than the enemy. If there's 20 enemy, basically a warband, slightly less than a warband, you can capture and move the bar forward. You're going to have to kill some of them. All right. And in order for that to happen, for you to control it, you must have control of an adjacent sector. So it's going to be multiple little sector things. 4 types: basic, chapter, keep, and war camp. All right, let's go now and see specifics on those sectors. Before we do, just to give you an idea, this is, I'll make this as big as I can. Sorry. So this is a, okay, it doesn't get bigger, shit. Anyways, this is a map. This is Cadrin Valley. Since we're talking about sectors and different bases and everything. We'll see this in more detail, but I just want you to see what we're talking about zones, right? You have the little purple circles, the little green circles, and the yellow circles. These are the different zones that's going to be contestable, and you can get them. The lines are just for this example to show you like how one is connected to the next zone. Right? I don't think those lines will exist on the map on the real thing, just maybe where the zones are, but that's it. Yeah. Sorry, Ramos, you can't put links. Sorry about that. All right, sorry. It's a typical rule, but I give you 60 seconds to post anything you want. It should work now. So, sectors. We said basic, chapter, keep, and war camp. So basic sectors are just swaths of land. They enjoy pumpkin spice lattes. Okay, so they have nothing, just capture them and that's it. Chapter sectors are those areas that have PvE chapter camp inside of them, usually, but may include other prominent areas. When a zone is active, RVR zone, all the NPCs are disabled, but the chapter camp is used to capture surrounding sectors. On a new zone, these sectors are automatically owned by the respective factions. Oh, okay, thanks. Right, bigger image, so you can see, thank you. So you can see this clearly with the zones and how they're connected. I repeat that the lines probably won't be there. I'm pretty sure they won't be there. It's just for us, for the example, to see how things are connected. So as you can see, there isn't like 4 or 5 zones. There is like 60. I think we'll see later because I've read the text a little bit earlier. I think about 60 zones you have to capture. It's a massive thing. So not a dull moment on this one. War camps are sectors that cannot be taken by the enemy. They are the only sector that camps with NPCs that will one-shot enemy players. They are the safe haven and central deployment hub for a faction inside of a current RVR zone. So respawn points, war camps. And then finally we have keep sectors, which are special and will be described in more detail in a later section. So just to recap these sectors, just basic things, you capture them, they don't have really something, you just need more of them to connect more lines, I suppose. Chapter sectors is the ones that have chapter war camps in them, part of the PvE section. And war camps, your respawn points throughout the entire map. And then keep sectors, we'll see in detail further down. So this is an example of a sector map for a zone that has a historical low player reputation in RVR. Originally, there were only 2 attack-defend paths between the 2 keeps, which were both major funnels. Players would sometimes use the PvE areas to bypass these funnel areas, reminding you Carving Valley has tunnels as well, and you can go through those to skip half the PvP map to go to a safe point and then reinsert yourself about halfway down the map, maybe sometimes 3/4 of the map, without having to do any PvP. In our system, the above still exists, of course, but now nearly all of the PvE zone is included in RVR. There will be 60 sectors in the zone, most of which are near buildings, camps, etc. In this format, as every inch of ground can matter, there will always be multiple fronts players have to fight on. Running around a single blob will likely lose you the zone, in addition to no longer being safe due to Zergbusters. Zergbusters is the final ability you can pick up on a tree on a class. We've seen those, we've done a lot of videos explaining the classes and the mechanics. You can always go to the online builder and see the classes available on Interbellum, and you can see the Zergbusting abilities is the last one on the bottom that takes like almost all your AP. In game, the connecting lines will not be present as they are quite ugly. Yes, we agree on this. This image is a showcase how the sectors connect for the purpose of this public release. Instead, the center of the icon will be the color of the owning faction, and it will have a green outline if it's currently contestable by opposing faction. Just to show the map clearly one more time. So, shitloads of points of interest. Also, this generates a lot more points where solo areas, witch hunters, witch elves, well, no longer witch elves, but let's say dogs and shamans and the stealth classes can go and PvP. Definitely people will be able to capture this, I suppose, as solo, it's 3 people, smaller groups, but in a longer timing required, and we'll have more things to do. Now, let's move on to capturing zones. Zones will now be captured by a ticket system we'll call provisions, rather than simply controlling a number of battlefield objectives or capturing the enemy keep. When the enemy faction's provisions reach 0, your faction will capture the zone. The following is all placeholders to showcase how this would work, so the numbers may change. Each faction starts a zone with 5,000 provisions. Provisions cannot be restored naturally, only removed. There is an exception listed in the campaign section for this document. Yeah, okay. Every time you kill an enemy and they respawn, the enemy faction loses 2 provisions. If they get resurrected, this does not apply. I think this condition here is going to be super important. I'll talk about it when we finish this a little bit. Taking the enemy keep will remove 2,000 provisions. Owning more sectors than the other faction will reduce their provisions based on the difference in the amount owned. This effect ticks every 5 minutes. So the difference in point loss, depending on how many things you own, 1 is 10, 2 is 30, 4 is 100, 6 plus is plus 50 to remove that. So the more zones more sectors you own, the more provision you take out of the enemy. Taking the keep, I'm sure it's a nice big buff on 2,000 points or 5,000. So it's what, 40% if you take the keep. The reason why I said that this is important here is for this reason. Every time you kill an enemy and they respawn, so in order for the provisions to be removed, they have to respawn. So someone could just not release for 10 minutes and those provisions would not be removed instantly, number 1. Number 2 is that if they get resurrected, the provisions are not removed, all right? Reminding to people that in Interbellum, there is no resurrection, right? You have to have morale 1 to resurrect, and there are some classes that have something they can do, but it's not instant, it's not in combat, so resurrection happens out of combat only, unless you have morale to resurrect. So people dying, they may not, they may want to wait until the fight is over and then release in order to help not waste your provisions. And of course, combat has to be finished for people to be resurrected afterwards. So a combat will have to come to an ending. One side wins, everybody else is dead. Then they get resurrected. The provisions go on the next 5 minutes or whatever. So this is going to be important because a lot of this, and another reason is when you have a lot of people playing solo and they go out there and they get run over by a group, by warband, 3 versus 1 or whatever, and they keep respawning, right? They can lose you the zone. I mean, it's 5,000 points, but it depends how many times. For example, something I used to do for fun sometimes when I get pissed off, where I go naked and I'll keep running to the enemy war camp and keep dying and resurrecting, keep dying and resurrecting 20, 30, 40 times. I've done that on live stream as well, but that's me. But doing that 20 times, that is like 50 provisions removed for no reason. So we see that now everybody's going to have to take responsibility for winning or losing a zone. I don't know what it says end placeholder here, but I don't remember. But anyways, overall, this means the zones will always be captured, even if the case of deadlock fighting, whatever few sectors are exchanging sides. Taking an enemy keep is still a massive boon taking the zone, but it is not the only way to win. Controlling significantly more sectors than the enemy can quickly overcome provision disadvantages from kills or keep loss. This is true, and also this system, as they say here, prevents the deadlock. Like, you don't have to take the keep and, the numbers are even, nobody's attacking. Just grab a couple of sectors more than the enemy, move around, do whatever, and you close the map. You can move to the next one if you don't like it or not, and it keeps moving forward. Campaign. There are different types of zones. Campaign zones are the tier 4 zones. These zones progress the campaign when captured, moving to the next zone of that pairing. They change the available scenarios. Remember that scenarios, according to the universal design we've seen, right? And you can read about it on my website, on the articles we did on Interbellum, that the scenarios depend on what zone is active. So if we have the dwarf zone active, you get Ekrant. If we don't, and we have the elf, you get an elf one. Right? If you have an empire one, you get Northland. And also, doing scenarios contributes towards the campaign progression. They're not separate anymore, as in Return of Reckoning or Flame of War. They are connected as in the original, giving bonuses and other things. And they determine the overall winning and losing faction. Provision zones are opened up as an overflow zones whenever there is too much population. These zones still use the provision system, except whenever you remove enemy provisions, your faction restores twice that amount in the current campaign zone. These zones are locked whenever one side reaches 0, but there is no zone lock bonus. All contribution here is applied to active campaign zone for its lock bonus. So if I understood this correctly, because it kind of confused me a little bit. So you have one zone, let's say we have the dwarf greenskin open and we're fighting there and there's too many people, and then they're going to open the elf one, and you go and play there, and then you remove provisions from the elf zone, and when you remove one from the enemy you double yours on the elf zone, and when that one is locked it goes towards the dwarf campaign. Like anything you do on the overflow, it goes on the main one. I don't understand how the provisions work here. Like you go to the overflow, you kill somebody and you gain 2 for yours and they lose 2. Oh, sorry, you gain 4, they lose 2. That's clear. And then you have to lock this zone, and anything contribution on that zone goes onto the active one, like the dwarf one. I don't know how that works, because you have to lock the overflow first to apply the bonus on the active, or campaign, we mean the whole thing. All right, okay, we'll see how that works. It makes sense how you connect one to the other, just not sure how to explain it. All right, so people don't get punished for oh, I see, okay, cool. Low population zones are only opened up if the current population on either faction in RVR is too small to warrant opening a campaign zone. These zones use the provision system, but with a lower starting value. These zones will not have keeps, keep claiming, or siege weapons. These zones do not have a zone lock bonus, and all contribution in them is still applied to the campaign week, even if locking this zone does not advance the campaign. And these zones are Barakvar, Shadowlands, Illyrian. I think you already put them there. Oh, you put the other ones. Anyways, these are the zones here. So we also have different zones opening up on low population. We have main campaign, and then we have zones that if you have too many people, they open up another one. You can move there and you don't get penalized for going to the little zones. So since there are no penalties or losses, it's another nice way to send people to less populated zones avoiding the zerging. Although theoretically the zerging won't be favorable on Interbellum due to zerg busting abilities. Ekron and Mount Bloodhorn will serve as a tier tutorial zones. The RVR Lake will have a mini sector system that uses provisions. There will be no keeps, keep claiming, or siege weapons. After the zone locks, everyone in the lake will be murdered after 5 minutes. Allah had to say, they didn't say will be killed, will be removed, they will be murdered after 5 minutes, and the lake will reset. The PvE areas will always be active in these zones and function as the first part of the leveling quests. Marshes of Madness will always have its PvE area active, and this will function as the second/final part of leveling quest. The RVR Lake in this zone will be used for a group-based PvE leveling area. These are quests that get credit from killing elite NPC enemies and or players within the RVR Lakes. This will be the fastest way to level using PvE due to the PvP risk and the fact that it will require a group to kill the NPCs. Only one pairing of campaign zone is open at one time, such as Dwarf vs Greenskins. Victory in a campaign zone will push the next zone in that pairing. If you lock the zone at the enemy's gate, then that pairing will be locked for a minimum of 24 hours. A pairing will only allow 4 zone locks before moving to the next pairing. That way, if there is a tug of war, players will still get refreshed zones to fight in. There is a campaign week that resets on server patch/maintenance days. Campaign rewards are issued to players at the end of this week for their overall contribution for each zone this week. I do have a question here. What do we mean if you lock the zone at the enemy's gate? What is the enemy gate? What are we referring to when we say enemy's gate? Campaigns are always reset to neutral whenever this happens, and the faction with the most zones is the winner of that week. Campaigns can also be reset in the middle of the week whenever all 3 pairings are locked and the winner for that week determined then. Any fighting done after that point still grants contribution to weekly reward, but does not affect the outcome of the winner for that week. We also may use provision zones and low pop zones as campaign zones in such cases. Currently, this RVR document does not use cover forts or cities, and that will be down the road kind of thing. Well, forts and cities will wait. So far, this. All right, gate equals fort, the zone next to the fort. Okay, thank you. Next one is keeps, and I have to say from a quick look that I had, keeps have a brand new mixed system. Right, we'll see the details, just outline for you guys. It's a mix between keep, scenario, fort, open RVR, and some other shit. So let's have a look at the keeps. Keeps will use a 5 flag system. That's the fort part, remember? With each flag having additional purposes. There will be no keep lords or NPCs unless spawned by siege weapon system. All keeps have 100 keep health. A keep that reaches 0 keep health will be permanently destroyed. Keep flags are proximity based, which means you need to have people around them to capture them, and tick over the side who has the most players in the area. Most players in the area. These proximity flags don't seem to have a limit. If there's 20 people there, you can't capture it. These do not tick if the enemy faction has... Okay, my bad. These do not tick if the enemy faction has at least 12 players. So there is a limit here as well. Sorry, I jumped the gun a bit. All flags for the enemy faction deal 1 damage to keep health every 20 seconds when owned. If the attacker has all 5 flags, it would take 6.66 minutes. You should change that a bit. To reduce the keep health to 0, assuming that keep health was at 100 when they took the 5th flag. A keep has the outer walls, courtyard, and staging area owned by the attacker will eventually fall in approximately 33 minutes. So the defenders cannot indefinitely turtle inside the inner keep. If the attackers don't own the staging area adjacent sector, they cannot even begin the attack. So the most important one, I suppose, is the staging area, so you can begin your attack. If an attack has already begun and the defenders take the staging area, the attacker can still take the keep flags as long as they already own at least 1. I have to read this again, I'm sorry. If an attack has already begun and the defenders take the staging area, the attackers can still take the keep flags as long as they already owned at least 1. However, owning all 4 keep flags but the defenders have the staging area will also take 33 minutes to capture. Okay, so there's no easy way so far to capture the bloody thing. I mean, you have 4 flags in the staging area, or you have the staging area, you don't have the flags. It's still 33 minutes. It sounds a lot, but 33 minutes is not a lot of time. But you have to be active, and actually when you try in siege, you gotta be everywhere and capture everything. So active, active, active. As long as the keep health is above 0, the defenders can always take the staging area, even if they own no other adjacent sectors. This is because the keep counts as an adjacent sector and is still considered owned until destroyed. Okay, so the defenders have a little bit of an advantage there. The following are the descriptions of the 5 flags for each keep and what their respective benefits are. All keeps will only have 1 adjacent sector. The enemy faction must own this sector in order to siege the keep. This sector serves as one of the keep flags. Defenders restore 3 keep health every 20 seconds when owned, essentially significantly slowing the enemy from taking the keep if they don't own the staging area. So I suppose this is 1 sector here, if no mistaking. Keeps have a gatehouse flag. This flag will slowly restore the outer door health while owned by the defenders. This flag, if owned by attackers, will allow them to use the door even if it's not destroyed. So it's one up here. Now, this is interesting because theoretically, right, you could send a couple of stealth units up here in advance, get the flag, deploy the rum, and when the siege starts, you can go straight in because you would own this. At least an initial idea. So stealthers starting to have extra uses, I suppose. But we'll see if that is possible. Keeps have a courtyard to flag. This one here on the photo and below. The flag is where the portal from the war camp to the keep is located. If the attackers take this flag, that portal will despawn. In addition, the attackers will be able to use the postern doors on the outside wall. If the defenders retake this flag, they will need to own it for at least 5 minutes for the portal to respawn. The portal can only be used once every 10 minutes by an individual player. Okay, so you own the middle, you have a portal. The enemy attacking gets the middle, they get to use your posterns. Again, I'm assuming you can capture this even if the door is still up, which means people have to pay attention to this. Stealthers could steal it. We'll see. The portal can only be used once every 10 minutes by an individual. Okay, so there's a lot of people that can use the portal, but every single player can use the portal every 10 minutes. Okay, so like a warband can take it, go to the keep. If they all wipe and they end up back in the war camp, they gotta wait 10 minutes to reuse the portal. Okay, fair enough. Keeps have a downstairs flag. This flag will slowly restore inner door health while owned by the defenders. This flag, if owned by the attackers, will allow them to use the inner door and inner postern doors regardless if they are destroyed. I really want to see them taking this one when there's a difference. I really want to see how that's going to work out, but I understand the mechanics of it. The last flag is upstairs where the keep lord used to be. This flag is owned by the defenders, restores 2 keep health every 20 seconds. The primary purpose of this flag is to stall the enemy's ability to take the keep until the defenders can push out. Right, this is an interesting mechanic. A lot of different areas, a lot of different zones. I believe it will take a little while before people fully understand the mechanics and become second nature and they know what they need to capture and how to capture it. But it looks like you need to have a little bit of coordination in order to succeed in having a siege keep or win the map. Keep is not necessary to have it. You can do it with the adjacent sectors or killing, but at least now this system provides active zones, more hunting grounds, and more ways of winning over to take the keep or carry a lot of resources and do that over a very long span of time. Realm resources. These resources are used to purchase siege weapons, keep upgrades, and teleportation services for your faction within a particular zone. Each enemy death provides resources. This amount is diminished if the player has died recently. Killing an enemy guild leader or realm captain will generate additional resources. Oh boy. Imagine those well-known guild leaders and well-known warband leaders. Target them. More resources. I mean, from a combat perspective, you know, you go for the officers first, kind of thing. Each sector capture will provide resources upon capture. Guild leaders and assigned realm captains will generate more resources whenever they are involved in a kill or objective capture. This value is increased by the number of online guild members. Nice way to promote guild play. Being a guild, play with a guild, nice. For each non-basic sector your faction owns, your faction will generate resources every minute. Standard queue scenarios will provide realm resources equal to the scenario score for both factions. Warband queue scenarios will provide 10 times the scenario score for both factions. Supplemental queue scenarios provide nothing. If you want to know about the scenarios, the different types, standard, supplemental and stuff, they're all on the website fixitv.live. Go and read about it because there's a lot of information there. But I like how now scenarios are connected and reminding you that the type of scenario map you're going to play depends on the active zone. So you play Dwarf Zone, you got Ekron, you play Empire, you got Northland. Chaos, you play Northland, you know, that's how things work. But at least for people like me, that we enjoy scenarios a lot more than we enjoy Open RVR, most of the times, we get to contribute to that and get bonuses and help everybody else. So now scenarios are not useless. It's not a separate game within the game. And I do like the whole being part of a guild, be a guild leader, be assigned as a realm captain, lead war bands. Now you have motivation, both for your own self promotion, if you like, whatever, feel good about yourself, but you're also helping massively your side to win. So suppose people might be more inclined to group up. Guild points for keep claiming purposes are earned whenever a guildmate contributes to earning a realm resource. Also, you gotta play with your guilds to claim the keep. More work, more rewards. Also, importantly, even if you lose the scenario, you still generate resources equal to the score. Yes, win or lose, still give that to your realm. So you gotta participate. And also, I think some of the points from the scenario, win or lose, because the scenario is like, what, 15 minutes? Most of them end at 10. So you can generate multiple points for that. And a well-organized guild with a lot of people in it, you could say, okay, we got a warband, right? 24 people, we're gonna go and open RVR. But look, our guild has another 5 people, right? But guys, you don't fit on the warband, so make a group. Yes, they could make a group and say, you know what? Until there's a spot for us, we're gonna group up as a guild and we're gonna go on the scenario and try and support you guys on open RVR and give you points, right? Give you resources so we can win this. I think this might promote the good old realm pride a little bit, and you want to stay on your side, you want to do scenarios, you're not excluded from your guild, you have a different faction. No, the points generated by the scenarios are for generating resources so you can spawn siege weapons. They don't give you points for winning the map. They give you points for spawning rams, weapons, siege weapons, catapults, and stuff like that. They don't give you points for winning the zone. To win the zone, you gotta capture the zones, you gotta get the keep, you gotta kill people. They just support you in generating resources. Yes, but at the same time, you can only spawn a certain amount of siege weapons. There is siege weapons further down the line, but I think Ramaz is more qualified to answer that, but there is a limit to how many things you can spawn anyways. So if you have more people running, I suppose when you're ready to siege, you can spawn 10 weapons instead of 5, but that's it. Although you'll see weapons are not as powerful a thing as they were in previous games, but still necessary. Keep claiming. In the first 5 minutes of a new zone opening, all sectors are locked. Guild members with the appropriate permissions can bid against guilds with the same faction on control of the zone's keep. This bidding is done at the Realm Herald within the Warhammer using guild points. The highest bidder will own the keep for this zone while it is active. Ownership of the keep provides all guild members with a 25% bonus to renown points earned in this zone, as well as a 25% bonus to contribution scores for this zone. If the enemy keep is destroyed, these effects become 100% for the remainder of the zone. These effects are lost if your keep is destroyed. You must have been a member of the guild for a minimum of X days to get this bonus. The owning guild gains 0% guild points for activities in this zone. This is so that one guild cannot constantly gain control of the keeps for all zones. Okay, so you're gonna have to compete with other people, so the amount of points required for you claiming and keep and getting bonuses to your contribution, to your renown and everything else for your own guild is gonna come at a high price. Scenarios cannot trigger without equal number of players for the scenario. Then you have to actually win them. But scenarios generate less resources per player than doing actual RVR. I'm just reading the reply to the question on there. If you're wondering what I'm reading sometimes, you can read the live chat underneath me. So the questions are there. That's why we have it. Siege weapons. All siege weapons cost realm resources. Deployed siege weapons are no longer pooled behind a player. Instead, siege equipment Instead, siege equipment will present an icon above a player's head while mounted. If the player becomes dismounted, the siege engine is dropped until someone picks it up. Siege weapons can only be purchased by members of the guild who owns the keep for this zone, even if that keep is currently destroyed. This may be extended to allied guilds. Any player may pick up or use siege weapon that has been dropped deployed. Siege weapons can only be destroyed by siege damage. Burn. Any player may right-click an enemy deployable siege weapon to begin a 10-second break on attack cast, which will destroy the equipment. Ram deploy. Will deal massive siege damage to keep doors as long as 4 allied players are within 10 feet. No longer requires a minigame to function. So rams now, you just deploy them as long as you have 4 people and the damage is done. You don't have to do the little bar and click it and bar and click it all the time. Oil deals moderate damage to player and higher siege damage. So maybe you can survive the oil if you're a tank, but it does massive damage to siege weapons. Cannons or the like deployables deals high siege damage or high damage to a single player. Ballista or the like kind of weapons deals low siege damage and low damage to up to 96 players within selected area. Sapper charge, I'm assuming that's some sort of a landmine. Deal high siege damage, takes a 10-second break on attack cast to use. Siege tower, which can be deployed. This is in bold because it's not going to be on launch of the game. It's going to be implemented later. Siege towers placed on specific spots on the outer walls of a keep. 120 seconds after deploying, a ramp will spawn, which allows attackers to scale the walls. Barricades, deployable, places a game object that blocks line of sight and player movement. Can only be deployed in basic sectors. This siege weapon can take damage from player abilities. Blocks line of sight, interesting. Door upgrades, increases the health of a keep door. This will not restore current health if the keep is under siege. Repair kits, also not on launch. It's going to be implemented later. 5-second break on attack cast. Repairs a keep door that has not been damaged within X minutes. And can repair the outer door even if the inner door is destroyed or under attack. Defense NPCs also will not be on launch. Spawns a squad of NPCs to defend the sector. These can only be spawned at chapter and keep sectors, and there is a limit on the number that may be spawned. These do not respawn. Portals. Spawns a teleportation portal within a war camp to any chapter sector. Keep sectors will always have an active portal as long as the unique flag of the keep is owned by the defender. This portal will last for X minutes and any player from your faction may use it. So faster movement with portals, defense NPCs to slow down the enemy on specific sectors, repair kits if you want to really defend your keep for once, door upgrades to have more HP, you can do this in advantage, barricades blocking line of sight and player movement, but they can be destroyed by abilities, siege towers, more access points through the walls, not just the funnel at the keep, so you have your own access point, sapper charges, extra siege weapons for defense, I suppose. Cannons and ballistas as we know it. Oil with the difference of doing moderate damage to players and high on siege weapons. RAM no longer requires the minigame, you just deploy with 4 people around and you can destroy by right clicking an equipment after 10 seconds. And siege weapons can only be destroyed by siege damage. So the siege weapon seems interesting. The new ones, of course, is the sapper charge, the siege tower, barricades, repair kits, and door upgrades that existed in previous versions, including the original game. And defense NPCs and portals, but defense NPCs, you control them, and portals also for faster travel. Mostly, sapper charge is mostly for damaging doors. Okay. Right, it seems like this took a little bit shorter than I expected to, right? So keep in mind that most things are provisional and may change in the near future.